Alright, so I'm going to try something a little bit different here. I'm going to do this while I read scary Reddit stories. I'm going to start with someone missing for months and my family is acting like nothing happened. Alright, and this is by Donovan 221. Uh, alright, alright. I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's hard for me to imagine that over these last, all that I've lost over these last few months. Out of everything, though, my sanity is going to be the thing I miss the most. I've been a hiker for a long time. Naturally, of course, considering that's all there really is to do around here. Not that I'm complaining, at least I wasn't complaining. I thoroughly enjoy the woods, probably because it's all I knew. And hell, most of the trails are just a hop, skip, and jump away from my family's house. That day was no different. It was the start of summer's break, and high school was finally over, and I wanted to take a quick hike through the woods to embrace the feeling, to let my thoughts and memories run free while I got to embrace the scenery. This particular trail, though, was quite literally in my backyard. I'd hiked it I'd hiked it dozens of times because it was my favorite point in life. I didn't pack much. I didn't expect to be gone for too long. Just a few granola bars and a book of matches. Just in case I never thought, just in case. I never thought to, hold on. I never brought my phone on these hikes because it felt like a contamination. Hold on. Terrible at multitasking. Because it felt like a contamination of nature. Well, that and also because I didn't even have service at my house, let alone in the middle of the forest. And I was leaving. As I was leaving, my mom announced to me that she'd be cooking my favorite meal, a country fried steak and baked potatoes with sour cream later that night. She also told me that be inviting people over just so we could have a little get together and celebrate my milestone. Overall, the day started out great. Then I started to hike. For the first 200 yards or so, nothing seemed abnormal to me. I could see my house way off in the distance and I recognized some of the markings I had left on trees. My go-to in tree carvings was usually a smiley face, and a lot of them had been aged and faded. But some were still fresh. At around 300 yards, however, that's when I heard it. It sounded like rushing water, something that did not line up at all with this part of the trail. Naturally, I decided to follow the sound. That was my mistake. Letting curiosity lead me away from the beaten path, I convinced myself that I knew these woods. No matter how sprawling, I would find my way back. The sound led me deeper and deeper, but everything still felt familiar. I convinced myself that I knew these woods, no matter how swirling, I would find my way back. The sound led me deeper and deeper. But still everything felt familiar. The more I walked, no, the more I walked, the closer the noise became. Only it didn't feel like I was getting closer. It felt like I had been walking for hours, even though the sun was still directly above me. I think that's the only thing that gave me confidence to keep going. I hadn't seen any smileys on any of the trees. I thought for sure I was walking a straight path, and all I had to do was turn around and walk straight again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of walking, I found the source of the sound. It wasn't a river or even a stream. It was concentrated rainfall, right in the center of the trees. The sky above was clear blue, not a cloud to be seen. But in the circle, which couldn't have a circumference of more than 20 feet, monsoon rains pelted the pine needles on the ground below. I'd been so lost in my own head for the entire week, but seeing this immediately made me snap out of it. It was the most bizarre thing I'd ever laid eyes on. I decided to do something strange. Walking to the edge of the wall of rain, tilted my head back and let some rain fall in my mouth. Only the first drop touched my tongue. Then the rain stopped. I could still taste the earthy water on my tongue, but the evidence of rainfall was completely removed. No mud, no smell, just dry soil and brown pine needles. I chuckled to myself, trying to come up with an absolutely and any logical reason to why this had happened, and what I had just witnessed. Maybe it was leftover rain from that big storm we had a few days ago. That was the only thing I could think of at the time. I turned on my heels and scratched my head as I started back towards the trail. I walked and walked and walked and walked. The sun was setting. There was no trail. Hold on, what the heck? I knew not to panic, and of headed I thought that level-headedness had served me some right when I came across one of my smiley face carvings. It was just before dark, and daylight. Daylight had become almost non-existent, but I could still see through the path, or see enough to make it out. The sight of it made me practically jump for joy. I ran over and touched it. For a split second, I thought I'd recognize the tree. It's just the smiley face. It's just the smiley face itself. It was wrong. It looked like had it had just been carved. Yeah, excuse me. The flesh was still wet. The outlines were still oozing with sap. Then I looked at the surrounding trees. There was a smiley face carved into every single tree. Each one looking brand new. That's when the panic started to override that level-headedness. I started running. The sun was gone. I swore I could hear something behind me, but I didn't know. Hold on. Eventually, so I could hear something behind me, but I didn't know whether it was reality or if my mind was playing tricks on me in the in the dark. Eventually, I found myself in complete darkness. Everything looked like everything. There was no trail, just dense, unrelenting Appalachian pine. I just kept running. When I couldn't run, I jogged, and when I couldn't jog, I walked, and then I couldn't walk anymore. I knew I needed to figure out shelter. It took, I took some fallen branches and sticks and formed a makeshift tent, but I couldn't sleep that night. How could I, with the sounds that the forest made, every twig snapping, like uh, felt like a threat on my life. This was more about keeping myself hidden until daylight. The minute the sunlight started to peek through, I was on the move. Another day without finding my way back into the trail until I went through every granola bar I had packed. It was like the trees were cloning themselves. I used my pocket knife to carve out new defining features just so I could have my bearings, but still ended up walking in circles. By day 3, I was in survival mode. I convinced myself that people had been looking for me by now. All I needed to do was stay alive. It seemed like the forest provided just as much as it trapped. When I was thirsty, a stream would appear. When I was cold, lightning would strike a tree and set it ablaze, somehow never spreading beyond to that one single tree. The food that I remember, the food is what I remember most. I never had to hunt. Every morning I'd wake up with a freshly skinned animal at my feet. I'd grown accustomed to squirrels and raccoons. It wasn't just meat, though. Fruits began to grow from the pines apples, oranges, plums, berries, all of it. I didn't trust any of it first. I even woke up screaming from the first time I saw a bloodied squirrel carcass at my feet. But what was I supposed to do now? I had nothing. Like all humans do, I had to create, like all humans do, I adapted. I had to create my own shelter. I had to cover my own ground, but clearly something wanted to keep me here. The only question was why. Even with that question in mind, I learned to stop caring. I missed my family and my life, but I was alive, and I was nourished, and somehow able to keep going. Over the months, I learned how to really provide for myself. And I think the forest knew that. It gradually started leaving me without food. The trees stopped bearing fruit, but it didn't leave me with nothing. I learned how to make nets to catch fish. I learned how to start a fire without the use of the sun. I became crafty and used thin vines and flexible wood to make bows and arrows. I turned rocks into tools and learned how to make shelter. That was more than just a place to stay hidden for the night. Eventually, I was fully self sufficient. I could ward off my own predators, could treat my own wounds, and I started to embrace the forest rather than just reject it. And then, one fateful morning, months after I set off on the trail, I heard it. I could hear the rushing water again. It hadn't been there the day before, but I knew all too well that this could have been another trick of the forest. The sky above me was blue and cloudless. The air was dry. I had to take the chance. I left my shelter. I left my belongings. All I had was tattered, dirty shirt on my back, and the jeans that had been cut into shorts on my waist. I followed the noise. I walked past hundreds. Of smiley face carvings, deeper and deeper into the forest. Finally, after what I felt like what felt like hours, I saw it. Rain, pelting against the roof of my house. I started bawling automatically. And no, to the little Timmies that might see this, might not. It's not what you're thinking. Be quiet. It was a primal response. The relief was incalculable, breaking into a sprint. Breaking into a sprint, I dashed through my backyard and towards the front door. I tripped up the front door and tripped. I tripped up the porch steps and fell through the entrance. I looked up to find Dad cooking an eyebrow at me from his recliner. Balloons filled the living room. A banner hung above the archway into the kitchen. The smell of country fried steak and baked potatoes
So for real, they have brand names?
premade
Obviously. And trends.
premade.
Come on, just
Hold on,
see. Okay,
I
Burlington.
don't know
But why
a
is this
lot.
like actually
I don't know how
cute?
to pronounce this one.
Exactly. So what's on your back to school list? Shoes, jeans, sweatshirt, backpack. Wait. Is that makeup? Was I right or was I right? Put it all in the cart.
Permeated.
At prices
I don't
like
know.
these, just get it all.
Permeated
Burlington.
my nostrils.
Deals, brands,
Congratulations, my entire family surrounded me, each member looking more concerned than the last. You're right there, bud? My uncle asked. What happened, kid? You fall down a mountain? My grandfather added. What day is it? I asked frantically, ignoring the question. Saturday? My dad answered, confused.
Get the coverage that's right for you and top-rated customer
Why?
service with NJM Insurance.
The,
Learn more
the
at
date. What's the
njm.com.
fucking date? I yelled. A weird tension fell over the room. A few of my cousins laughed. My aunt looked personally offended. My grandma was the only one who looked empathetic. May 25th, sweetie, she cooed. You know that. No, no. That's not right. It can't be right. My mom was in the room at this point, oven mitts covering her hands. Are you feeling all right, sweetie? She asked. You don't have a fever, do you? She took off one of the mitts and tried to feel my forehead, but I jerked away and ran towards the bathroom. Feeling dizzy, I hunched over the toilet, vomiting for a few minutes before wiping my mouth and staring into the mirror. I was completely unchanged. No dirt, no scars. My clothes were dirty, but still intact. My jeans were just jeans, not shorts. While I was staring into the mirror, trying my best not to hyperventilate, a knock came at the bathroom door. Son, you alright in there? My dad asked. I didn't respond. There was a silence for a few moments before he spoke again. Damn it, boy, he cursed. I've told you time and time again. You need to be careful in those woods. Yeah, that's it. I honestly kind of enjoyed this story. I like the concept of the forest kind of teaching you how to survive on your own. Um, it was the concept I think could have a little more to the story, but I kind of liked it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Yeah, that was it. Honestly, really good, and I liked it. Yeah. That'll be it until the king returns.